Hello all, welcome back to the session. This is the second session of our JavaScript journey. So in this journey, let's try to go into the fundamentals of JavaScript and let's try to understand what are the different data types and how the data types have been segregated in JavaScript and a lot of more things altogether. So let's start. Now coming back to this thing, before going ahead and understanding what are the different data types that are present inside this respective language, um, a standalone practice, I can say, whenever you're learning any kind of a new language, we go ahead with one simple thing, which is known as writing a program to print this hello world thing, hello world program. So let's also try to do the same kind of a thing. Let's do the hands-on part here in itself, and let's see how can we, or what are the different ways that we can do this hello world thing in or hello world program in JavaScript language altogether. For that, let me open the VS Code. So currently this VS Code that I have currently opened. Now let me open a folder. So click on open. I have already created a folder name as code. We open it. Press this, and I don't need this agent thing. So whenever you are learning new thing, do one favor, do yourself a favor. Do not at all have this AI involved in your work. Whenever you're learning new things, let's keep the AI aside and let's work upon our given particular thing. So let me create few files. Let me create this respective thing. Let me, all right, let me cut it off, right? It's not that useful. So I'll say I'll create a simple file index.html file. So I'll say let me write this sample code. Let's say we have this respective sample code. I think mm, okay. This would be our basic sample code. Let me try to zoom it. Let's say keyboard shortcuts. I think this keyboard is, I think, for zoom. Let's search for something like zoom. Uh, okay, fine. So I can say this as, yes, this is a zoom. Right, let's zoom this bit a little. And now let's go ahead and let's try to write our code a bit better. Right. So here we already know that if we have a basic tag, we say it. If you have a basic tag and I'll say hello world, or I'll say hello world program, it would be working fine. But the one advantage that we have already seen the use of the JavaScript is where we can include the JavaScript code inside our HTML code altogether. So for that, we have a new tag known as script. As we have already seen the introduction part of the JavaScript, where JavaScript is actually considered as the scripting language. So we have a tag known as script, where inside that we can write some kind of a, I can say, some kind of a code of JavaScript. So our basic thing is we need to print something like hello world while um, using JavaScript. Using JavaScript. So in order to write this thing, previously in any given particular language, we simply write print or printf hello world. But in JavaScript, we have a given particular thing known as an console.log. And I'll simply say hello world. I can simply say hello world. So what does this given particular console.log means? So in order to get a grasp on this given particular console log, I'll get into that point within a few minutes. But at this point, I can clearly say that this console log, whatever thing that you are seeing here, console.log represents some kind of a print statement, print or something like printf statement, or something like cout. So we have print in Python, printf in C, cout in C++. So in these respective languages, we have different kind of a functions that are given by the language itself, where using this we can print some data onto this respective screen. Similarly, if you want to print something onto the screen respectively using JavaScript, we have this one single thing known as a console.log. So in order to see its output, we can say we can go to this, click on go live. So one very important thing we need to understand it, when you are writing JavaScript code inside a HTML, we need to make this HTML code run. That's our primary motive. Whenever you're writing JavaScript code inside your HTML document, .html file, index.html file, if you want to see the output of this JavaScript code, we should definitely make this HTML page run in the browser. Then only we will be able to see this respective output. So for that, we have this option known as go live. So in order to have this go live option, we need to have some kind of an extensions. So let me close it. Um, we need to have some kind of an extensions like some live server. If I'm not wrong, there is something known as live server here in this extensions. We should have this given particular extension. So I've already installed the extension inside my VS Code IDE. So I click on thing, right? So let me get this thing here. So currently you can clearly observe the index.html file. If you can clearly see, index.html file which we have written with a heading hello world is currently running in our browser. Now coming back to this one very important thing we need to understand, if I inspect, let me zoom this also a bit. If I inspect whatever code that we have written here, specifically, let me go back to this thing, whatever code that we have written inside this body tag, specifically h1 and this script, you will be able to see the same code here inside this inspect. I can clearly see inside this body tag we have h1 tag and we have this script tag console.log hello world. So now if you can clearly see on the right hand side we have something known as console. If you go into that console, you have this given particular thing known as hello world. So one very important thing we need to understand is whenever we mention something like console inside this given particular JavaScript, or if you want me to explain this, what is this given particular console.log? Because in other programming languages, we have it is print or printf, which is very straightforward. But here in JavaScript, it is mentioned as console.log. Log means print. Log means writing down. Similarly, if you can clearly observe, this is a kind of a writing down inside something known as console. So what is meant by console? If you go to browser, I'll go back again. You go browser, right click and click on inspect. You'll see something like elements, console, and few other things, sources, network, and some other thing. The console that we have written this given particular thing inside our program is nothing but this console. So we have clearly mentioned console log hello world. So print this given particular statement hello world inside this console. That's what this console.log means. Inside the console, please print. What should I print? This statement, this string hello world. So that's what you can clearly see, this hello world. All the remaining things that you are seeing other are from VS Code altogether, which you can ignore at this given particular point. Sorry. So this is what meant by console. Now comes to this interesting part. What is the other way of executing your JavaScript code? As we have clearly seen that JavaScript can be implemented inside the browser. So if I click on inspect, if I go to console, now in the console, I can write the JavaScript code. I can execute the same code. I will say console.log hello world. You can clearly observe this is what we can do specifically when you're writing this thing in JavaScript. I click on yes, yes. So as we already know that JavaScript is made for browsers. It is, or the browser is such kind of an environment where we can execute our JavaScript code. So in your browser, open, be it any browser, you can go to the inspect, we can go to this console tab, and you can write any kind of a JavaScript code. It works here. It definitely works here. Right? Now, this works fine. But another thing that we also need to understand is, let's go back to our console log and let's try to understand this given particular concept a bit more. So apart from this browser, we also have other environments where we can learn Java, where we can run our JavaScript code, which is known as Node.js. Now, before running code or JavaScript code inside Node.js part, I just want to show you one very important thing, because whenever I have already told you, whenever you want to run this given particular JavaScript code, which is written inside a HTML document, we want this HTML document to be run inside the browser. Then only we can see this JavaScript that will be executed. If you don't want this code, HTML code, or this JavaScript code to be executed inside the HTML document. The other way is we can create an external JavaScript file. So for that, I'm currently in my what I'm currently in my VS Code. Let me create a new file and let me name it as index.js. So whatever code that we have, I'll say I'll write the same thing, console.log. I'll simply say hello world from external JS file. So whatever code that we have written inside this respective script tag, this thing is actually known as what I can say, internal JS code or internal JavaScript. But here, whatever code that we have written, it is from a different index.js file. If you can clearly remember, if you want to create any kind of a JavaScript file, we need to have this extension known as .js. If you want to create any kind of a Python file, you'll simply mention index.py. It represents Python file where you can simply write Python code. You'll simply say printf or sorry print. I'll say hello world. So for a given particular respective external file, the extension represents the language that we are be using. So we are not worried about this respective Python file. So we are worried about this JavaScript file. So I have created an external file named as index.js, where this .js extension is clear indication that this file or in this file we can write JavaScript. That's why I have clearly written some kind of a JavaScript code in this external file. Now, if I want this file to be attached or to be run when this HTML code is running in the browser, I repeat, when I want the code that is present inside this external file named as index.js to be run, whenever I run this index.html file, I can simply say that script. So let me say it. I'll simply write script, where in the script we have this something known as not type. We have something known as src. Right. So once you mention this src, this kind of a thing, now clearly let's try to see what is the one thing or what is the I can say what is the variation that we have or which file will be executed, which is nothing but let's try to clearly understand whether we'll be able to understand or whether we'll be able to execute this code, internal JavaScript code, or the code that is present in external JavaScript file altogether. So let's see, let's go back to this document altogether. Let's inspect. Let's go to console. Now let's run the code. Now I can clearly observe. Your browser has given importance for this internal JavaScript code. Whenever in a given particular HTML file, if you have two script tags, one script tag is attaching the external JavaScript file to your HTML file, and in another script tag, you have some JavaScript code. Your browser will take this internal JavaScript code as at highest priority. This will be run first. Now, if you can clearly observe, if I comment this code, altogether, if I remove this code, for example, okay, let me say, I think this thing, is it auto saved? Is very important. It is not with auto save, sorry. Yeah, it is with auto save. Now, if I remove that given particular code, now you can clearly observe, I have only this JavaScript file attached to my HTML file, and inside this external JavaScript file, we have some code. We have some JavaScript code. Let's try to understand. Let's go to inspect. Let's go to console. Now you can clearly see the JavaScript code or the JavaScript code that is present inside this external JavaScript file has been executed. Similarly, previously I haven't saved the file. Now let's go back. Let's execute this code, or let me do this one thing. Let me add this script tag. Let me add some kind of a code, because previously I have this autosave option not enabled in my VS Code. So yeah, let's try it out again. So which code will be executed, whether this external file code or if I write an internal JavaScript code, which code will be executed? So script tag, and I'll simply mention console log hello world. Let's see. If I run the code, now you can clearly see how many number of JavaScript code that is present inside your HTML. If this JavaScript code is written internal side, or if this given particular JavaScript code is present externally, like this in an external file altogether, both the codes are exactly being implemented altogether. But the best practice is, when you're doing this, avoid this. When you're doing this, avoid this. You might be having it out. Why should we have this external file where specifically we can write our JavaScript code? Because as you build a bigger and larger applications, you cannot write that entire large code inside the HTML file altogether. The HTML file size and file uh, thing would be very large, very huge altogether. That's what I meant to say. In that given particular case, we need to be very careful that go with this file. Go with this file. When you have very small JavaScript code that needs to be executed specifically, you can go with this code. You can go with this other respective code where you can internally write, you can have internal JavaScript code altogether. But when you are having a huge JavaScript code that needs to be present, then create an external file like this, and then you can have your JavaScript code like this. So it is very much important thing. So previously that I have told you is because there is some kind of a mistake that had happened from my side. Now you have clearly observed how this entire thing is being executed. Now coming back to this respective thing, let's close all of these things. Now specifically here we have index.html and index.js. You might be having another doubt. What if we don't have this index.html file also? Only if we have index.js file, how can we run the code? So this is currently my VS Code IDE. So I have opened my terminal. I have opened my terminal. So let me show you how to execute a JavaScript file in a local system. We already know that whenever you run this HTML file, where in the HTML file we have attached some external JavaScript file, so that when this HTML file runs, this external JavaScript file also will be run and you'll get the output. That's completely fine. But coming back to this index.js file, if you alone want to run this index.js file without running this HTML file, then we have to definitely run this JavaScript file inside our local computer. So for that, you definitely need something known as Node.js environment. So if you want this Node.js environment that needs to be present, you can go to this respective thing known as a Node.js. We have this option known as download. Go there. Currently it's my Mac system. That's why I have this installer package that I have downloaded. If it is not Mac, but it would be Windows. If you, Linux, go there and have this thing. Windows. We have this Windows thing. If you are Linux, go to there and have this Linux. What are things that you have? You can have it and download it. So Node.js environment needs to be installed prior. You have to run your JavaScript thing. So whenever you are done with this Node.js thing, specifically this Node.js part, then you're all good to go to execute this respective JavaScript code in your local computer. So currently I'll press ls. So I'm currently in the code folder where it has HTML file and JavaScript file. If I want to, let me remove this thing. It is a bit irritating. Terminal. Okay, I'm sorry. Let me open back the terminal and I'll say ls. So in the code folder, I have two different files, HTML file and JavaScript file. Let me run the JavaScript file. To run the JavaScript file, we have a command known as node space and mention the file name, index.js. Mention the file name. So we have this command known as node. Whenever you want to run JavaScript code or TypeScript code locally in the computer, then we should have this given particular command known as node, because we have installed Node.js environment to run the JavaScript in our local computer altogether. Because as we have seen in the previous session, browsers have inbuilt JavaScript engines like V8 engine altogether, so they can run the JavaScript code by default. But it is not the same case with your local computer or local machine altogether. We need to have Node.js environment altogether. So we have to download that and install that Node.js environment into your computer, and we need to run the code. So I have already installed in my computer the Node.js environment, and we'll run the code. Right now you can clearly see what are things that you are seeing here. Hello world from the external JS file is now being printed. is now being printed. Is now being printed. So to run JavaScript code, you can attach the respective JavaScript code to the HTML file and run the HTML file in the browser so that your JavaScript code will also be run. That's the first type. The second type or the second case is nothing but run the JavaScript code and run that respective JavaScript code inside your computer using Node.js or using this command known as node. Another one important thing that I want to mention is this command node will only work. Specifically, this node command will only work once you have installed your Node.js environment altogether. That's one very important thing we need to see it. That's one very important thing we actually do it these days. If Node.js environment is not properly downloaded and installed in your computer, this command will not work. If it is installed properly, congratulations, it will definitely work altogether. So this is how we have started our respective JavaScript journey with the respective, I can say, yeah, with the respective a good Hello World program altogether. Now, let's try to see the other things that are present inside this respective JavaScript part. So specifically, if you can clearly see that, so let's go back. Let's run the web page. Let's run this respective web page. So we have this respective code like this. Currently, it's completely fine. Now, let me do this one very important thing. Right. Now let's try to understand what are respective statements. Let me remove all of these things. So what are respective statements in this respective thing known as in JavaScript? Specifically, what are meant by statements? So I can say the statements are kind of syntax, constructs, and commands that performs actions. The perform actions. This is what meant by respective thing known as in statements altogether. So for example, we have this thing known as an alert. So I'll say we have this respective statement. What I will say, hello. Let's see how can we run the code, or how does this given particular code actually run. Now, if you can clearly observe, whenever we are running this respective HTML file, then obviously JavaScript external file will also be run by the browser itself. So inside this respective JavaScript code, we have written a simple statement known as alert. Now, what is meant by this given particular alert? So whenever we use something like a statement like alert, you'll see something like a window like this. This is actually known as a small box, which actually have a clear name, which is known as modal window. So until unless we interact this given particular window, the respective remaining part, whenever I'm clicking on this hello world, you can clearly say I'm unable to select this hello world program on this respective screen using my mouse. So first we need to answer this modal window, then we have to go to this other parts. So if I click OK, then only I can write the code like this. I can select these things. But if I run the code again, I can clearly see first this hello will be executed. This hello will be executed. Until then, you can clearly see now the HTML is also not appearing on the screen. Click on OK. After clicking on OK, then HTML is actually appearing on the screen. Let me rerun again. If I refresh the page, the first things first, this entire browser is actually running this statement first. After answering this statement, then only you can clearly see the HTML execution. So the one very important thing we need to understand when we are attaching this external JavaScript file to HTML thing is, browser will run the JavaScript code at first. In background, it prepares the HTML code to be executed. So whenever we have this, or for this respective browser, see, let me explain this thing in something like how does this entire thing actually work. Whenever you are sending a package, whenever you're sending some package, HTML code with JavaScript code, whenever you're sending, because if you can clearly observe this HTML specifically, this HTML code consists of some JavaScript code. So these two are interlinked. This HTML and JavaScript both are present in one single HTML file. Whenever you are sending these two together into a browser, specifically this green color one is browser, then browser will differentiate HTML and JavaScript. Now browser have two different files. Initially we have combinedly kept HTML and JavaScript together into one single HTML file and we are sending it to the browser. But once it reaches to the browser, it differentiates the HTML file and the JavaScript file altogether. Once this differentiation actually happens, then the browser will individually attend to these two things, individually execute these two things. One, it focuses on HTML, and another thing is it executes or it focuses on execution of JavaScript. But in majority of the cases, if you can clearly observe, if I run the code, JavaScript execution will be dealt by the browser first. If we attempt it, then you can clearly see the HTML will be rendered onto the screen. So this is the pattern that we have observed while learning about the statement thing altogether. There's a very important thing. I'm actually teaching these internal things because it actually helps you to crack interviews with a deeper knowledge altogether. Now let's go back. Let's go back to this given particular code. Similarly, if I can say alert, I'll simply mention world. I can clearly see this is the first thing, hello. I have two alerts specifically if you can go. First alert is hello, second alert is world. Click hello, second alert is world. After in attending these two alerts, we have this HTML rendered onto the screen altogether. Now, if you can clearly observe, in the first statement, I have ended this alert with a semicolon. In the second statement, I have not ended this entire thing with a semicolon altogether. One very important thing we need to understand is in JavaScript or in TypeScript, in both the things. Specifically, when you are writing any kind of a line and at the end of the line, semicolon is must. Semicolon is must. Even if you forget to have semicolon, let's say if I have this alert world and if I go down to the next line and if I write some code like 1, 2, 3. Let's go back. Let's go back to this thing. Right. So whenever we are having this given particular first statement where it is ended with semicolon, and in the second statement where it is not ended with the semicolon, but we went for the fourth statement and we have written the code. One very important thing we need to understand is even if you miss the semicolon in some lines, browser will try to append it. Browser will add this semicolon by itself. So you might be thinking, okay, even if I don't add these semicolons at the end of each line, browser will add it. So why I should add it? It is a very good practice to add semicolon while writing JavaScript code at the end of each line. It's a very good practice. You can write this code because you can simply say alert. I'll say 1, not this, plus 2 plus 3. If I have this given particular code, in the first line, the line has ended till this given particular point. Now see how does this code actually work. If I rerun the code, I can clearly see the answer is 6 because 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6. Another important thing is you might be saying, Nitin, you have clearly told that end of each line, browser, if the developer hasn't included the semicolon altogether, browser will append it. Let me go back. But in this case, browser at the end of the first line, it haven't had appended this semicolon altogether because browser is bit intelligent enough that after seeing this end line, this first line is ended with plus icon or plus symbol altogether. After seeing this, okay, browser can clearly now understand, okay, this plus line indicates that some part is actually missing. So I should not add semicolon at this given particular end of the line. So I'll go to the second line and I'll check whether there are something that is meaningful present. It goes to the second line and it sees a number. And it also sees another plus, and it also observes, okay, in the second line also I have seen that this second line is ended with plus icon. Still, something is actually missing because this plus is a binary operator where this plus needs two elements, two integers. But in the second line also it is having one integer. So it again doesn't add or append this respective semicolon and it tries to get something meaningful out of it. So it goes to the third line and you can clearly see it ended with 3 and it found 3 and ended with something known as closing braces. So here you don't see such kind of an errors. But let me add this one thing. I'll simply say alert this thing. Let me say like this. Alert hello. Oh, sorry. And if I come on. if I specifically write the code like this, if I specifically write the code like this, 1 comma 2 for each, ah, come on, alert. So I have written a small code. So what is this given particular code? This statement, first line you have already understood. What does this given particular thing means? So it is meant that I have created an array with two elements. Do not worry about what is meant by array. We'll get to know about this array at some point. At some point, definitely. 1 comma 2. So I have created a respective thing 1 comma 2, an array with this respective thing known as 1 comma 2. Now this for each, what does this given particular thing actually does is this runs a loop on this given particular array. So this array has two elements. So this for each will execute the alert, above alert, the above alert. We'll try to execute this above alert two times because in the array we have two elements. So this for each tries to execute this hello two times because this array has two elements. So let's see whether this is actually happening or not. First hello, let's run the code, click OK, hello, then 1, then 2. So if you can clearly observe, let's rerun the code. This is alert hello, this is for first hello. Now I can clearly see this alert is being run for the first element, okay, and this alert is being run for the second element. Click on alert. Now what if we remove this semicolons? You can clearly see it is executing this first hello, first alert hello, okay, then you can clearly see it is not executing. Let's go, or let's rerun the code and let's check it. Hello, okay, it's not executing. Why? Let's inspect. Now one very important thing I need to mention is all the JavaScript errors can be seen in console, can be seen in browser's console. I can clearly see cannot read the properties of undefined, cannot read the properties of undefined, because once you remove this semicolon here, this entire statement according to the browser is like this. This entire statement is like this. Sorry, wait. This entire statement is like this. Let's go back. So if you miss semicolon, in some cases like this, you will find an error. Even browser will be confused at some states where to keep the semicolon. But it is always a good practice to have semicolons. When you have semicolons, your code absolutely works fine. Right? Your code absolutely works fine. That is the importance of semicolon. So if you want to have single line, I mean, this is about the importance of semicolon. And the other thing that I want to mention is if you ever want to have this one basic commands, if you want to have a single line comments, we have double under the thing. Let me remove this alert thing. Let me remove it. If you want to have a single line comments, you have to have this double slash. If you want to have multi-line comments, like where we can write comments in single line itself, single line comment. I hope you know how does this comments actually work. So whenever you have something like this double slash 1 plus 2 or some alert as this 1 2 3, your JavaScript code, this is an previous code, let's refresh it. Let's refresh it. You will see this alert is not being executed because this code is commented. Once the code is commented, it actually means that this is not a valid part. This is not a valid code. This will not be run by the JavaScript engines, environments. Now coming back to this respective thing, if you want to write multi-line code, now what is the single line comment? So in this one single line, we can write whatever comment we want. Instead of writing this thing, I can say the below code explains, or how does payment logic works. So the advantage of having comments is for a larger code base, if you mention comments, it will be very easy for the users to read the code, developers to use, and very helpful while debugging the code. So when I'm writing this comment, where this is, I can write whatever, anything I want, because this will not be executed at all. So if I go down and if I try to write, then this is exactly some JavaScript code. This will be shown as an error. This is what known by single line comment. If you want to write multi-line comments, I have this thing this thing like this, stars between the slashes. We can write multiple line comments, which is nothing but in the first line I can write something, second line something, third line something, fourth line something. All these things can be actually done using this multi-line comments altogether. So this is what about this respective comment part altogether. Now let's go to this other part and let's see what the things that we can do furthermore in the JavaScript altogether. Now let's try to see a unique, a new thing which is known as use specifically a special directive. Let's see it. Let's see it. Let me go to this thing and let's say we have this thing known as an special directive. Right, we have this something like a special directive altogether. Right, what is meant by this respective special directive? So we have some special statement. Previously we have seen what is meant by statement, the example of statement like alert. Similarly, we have something like a special statement or a special directive. We can call it as use strict. What is meant by this respective use strict or special directive? What is this use strict altogether? So one very important thing we need to understand is for a long time, I can say JavaScript has evolved without compatibility issues, which is nothing but like new features were added to the language while old functionality, I can say, didn't change. But one thing had happened, which is nothing but due to this, JavaScript having no compatibility issues altogether, that had the benefit of never breaking the existing old code altogether. But the downside of this given particular statement where JavaScript didn't have any kind of a compatibility issues was that any mistake or any kind of an imperfect decision made by these JavaScript creators, which are known as ECMAScript, that make that language can stuck forever. So at this point of time when new features are being added, JavaScript is working completely fine. But at some point, specifically at respective some point, if on a given particular in future on some day, if creators are actually made some kind of a mistake specifically, then in that scenario specifically, that would be a tough case, that would be strictly a tough case. So at such kind of a case, at such kind of an place, if that mistake had happened, then JavaScript will language will be stuck forever. So in order to avoid such kind of instances, because until 2009, if I'm not wrong, where this ECMAScript, currently we are using this ES6 standard, ES6 standard altogether. We have this ECMAScript standard 5. We have this ES6 and we have this ES5. Until 2009, if I'm not wrong, where this ES5 version has appeared, it added some new features. This ES5 had added some new features to the older version, which is ES4. New features to the language. And this actually modified some existing ones. Like obviously when new features are added to the older ones, it modifies the older versions altogether. So when this ES5 with the new things had happened, old code started, going off, or it started off with such kind of a modifications by default. It started working weirdly. It started completely not working altogether. So in order to avoid such kind of things, they have used this given particular special directive known as use strict. What this use strict actually does, we can use this use strict using double quotations, or we can use the same use strict using single quotations. Use strict. Either this we can go ahead with this, either this we can go ahead with this thing. Either of that we can do this thing. It's not the other way around. Either this is fine, this is fine. But one very important thing is, because currently majority of the JavaScript code has been turned to ES6. So whenever you are writing ES6 version JavaScript code, and if the code that you are writing in a file, where in that file, if you already have some previous JavaScript versions code, ES4 code, where you are writing some ES6 code in the same file, then you can use this use strict at the top altogether. So you'll be writing this code like this. Let me go to VS Code. I'll simply mention like this. use strict, use strict. And you can write your basic code. You can basically write this code. So once you write this given particular use strict at the top, um, um, I can say this enables, let me write it as a comment. It is very important. This enables strict mode in a function or code, or in a code, or in a piece of code. But this, whenever you mention this given particular use strict at the top, it is for your entire file. This use strict works for this entire file. Let's say in this currently index.js file, I don't have much code. But if I have 1000 lines of code in the same file, this use strict will be implemented for all the 1000 lines of code, of JavaScript code. So always mention that use strict should always be present at the top of the code. At the top of the code altogether. That's a thing. That's a thing. And one another important thing is there is no way to cancel this use strict. We should definitely, whenever you mention this use strict, some people have tried in an interview, some people have tried to ask this given particular question. What happens if I have this given particular thing? In JavaScript, we don't have this no use strict. We only have use strict. We only have this use strict. Whenever you are going with strict mode code, we are going with the strict mode code altogether. And one another important thing I want to mention is currently we are writing JavaScript code in some external files, like we are having this use strict. But sometimes when you go to a browser and here, if you want to inspect, if you want to run code here, you don't need to specifically mention use strict. There is no need to mention something like use strict. There is no need to mention use strict code here. In browser, no need to mention. Browser is already updated by the different companies altogether. So it is not that required. It's not that required for us altogether. Now, one very basic thing is, should we use this use strict? That's a question. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I can say majority of no, sometimes yes. But it's always a good pattern that we use it in rarest case possible, but yes. Because in modern JavaScript, it supposes classes, it supports modules, it supports classes, OOPS concepts altogether, advanced language structure altogether. So we don't require this use strict much. But for now, as it's kind of an welcoming guest at the top of the line of the entire code, so where under this use strict we'll write all of our code. So it is a choice, a user choice. We can go ahead with this use strict or not. That's a one primary thing that we want to understand. Now let's go ahead and understand this given particular thing known as, and what is meant by this respective thing known as variables. What are variables? How does variables actually look like in JavaScript? I can say variables are used to variables are used to store info or store this an information. I can say information. That is what variables are used for. I can say a variable, I can say, yeah, a variable is a named storage for data. Named storage, if you want a proper definition for data. The actual definition for variable in any given programming language, you can use the same definition. It is nothing but it is named as actual name for storage of, or storage, named storage for a given particular respective data altogether. We can use variables to store visitors, data like username, password, anything. So in JavaScript specifically, if you want to have to create any kind of a variable, we use a keyword known as let. And I'll simply mention, I'll say let message. So I have created a variable named message, where inside the message I can store whatever data I want. So I can simply store something like message, like I'll say hello. So instead of writing these two things, one very important thing we need to understand is the thing that we have did in the fifth line, in the fifth line, where we have just had let message, the below is called as what I can say, declaration. What is meant by declaration? So declaration actually means that we are declaring to the JavaScript interpreter that we are going to have, hey JavaScript interpreter, create a variable or create a storage with the name message. Create a storage with the name message. That's what we are clearly telling. But we are not clearly telling what to store inside it. So declaration means we are asking the interpreter to store or to create I can say storage with so and so name, storage with that name. So here we clearly mentioned let message. After seeing let, JavaScript interpreter will say, okay, the developer wants to create some kind of a storage and he wants to have some kind of a name with message. So we have a lot of big memory. Inside that big memory, we're occupying some small storage, a very little storage with the name message. This is what meant by declaration. And here we are storing some data like some hello inside this given particular named storage, inside this given particular variable, to be more precise, or named storage altogether. That's what we have given thing. A named storage for a data. If I want to store this hello, I can store inside this something variable named as message. So a variable is a named storage for data. So whatever data, if you want to store inside your program, you create these variables and store inside them. That's what these variables are about. So this entire thing, this is the below thing is actually known as initialization. I can say not perfect initialization, a partial initialization or storing the data, specifically storing the data into the variable. I can say, let me give some kind of a gap, right? So the above thing that you are clearly seeing here is it is known as declaration, and the below thing where we are storing some data into a name, into a variable, into a named storage. This is actually known as partial initialization or storing the data. We can combine these two things into one single line. So that is, I can say, if I can remove this entire code and I can call it as initialization, where I can say let message is actually equal to something known as hello. So initialization is where I can clearly say declaration plus storage happens. Initialization is a place where both declaration and storage happens. This is what the primary difference between initialization and declaration altogether. So while initialization, we clearly mention, we clearly tell to the JavaScript interpreter, hey JavaScript interpreter, I want to create a variable named message and I want to store the data hello inside this named variable or inside this given particular storage. So this is what meant by initialization. So initialization where declaration and storage happens simultaneously, but declaration, it is not the case. That's what we have observed in our previous given particular thing altogether. Now one very important thing we need to understand is, once we declare a variable, I repeat, once we declare a variable, we cannot redeclare, which is nothing but, let's say if I say something known as let message is let message, this is a basic let me create MSG. I have created a variable named as MSG. Just I have declared. This is what declaration looks like, right? And if I ever want to redeclare it, if I say let MSG is equal to something like world or something like hi, JavaScript interpreter will show an error message because declaration happens only once. We cannot redeclare the things. Declaration happens only for one single time. It doesn't happen multiple times. This is one very important thing we need to understand. Specifically, I'm repeating that if you are using let to declare the element, to define the element, sorry, to declare the element specifically, to declare the element, then declaration happens only once. Declaration happen only once. So in modern JavaScript, declaration happens only once. In modern JavaScript, declaration happens for a given particular variable only once. Right. Now let's remove it. Now if I remove it, you'll see error is gone. Error is gone. This is what we can do it. This is what we can do it. Similarly, you can declare multiple variables. I'll say let message, let age is equal to 25. I'll say let is married is equal to false. We can declare different kind of a variables. We can store different kind of a data altogether. That's completely fine. But instead of writing these let multiple times, what we can do is we can keep them in one single line. We can keep them in one single line. I can say let this age would be something like 25. Is married would be something like false. This is a shorthand form, shortcut form. But instead of having this shortcut form, let's have this longer version, because this version reduces the readability of the code. So we don't prefer this thing, but I'm showcasing all of these things because in interviews or in some cases, some people try to twist with you these kind of syntaxes. I just want to be very clear with this thing with all of you. That's what I'm actually doing this given particular thing. We can also write this same code like this. Right. So we can write the code like this. We have this comma here at the end. Comma means extension. Comma means whenever JavaScript interpreter sees comma, it says, okay, the code is not yet completed. We need to go to other part. That's what this comma looks like. So after seeing the comma at the end of this given particular line, it goes to the next line. Same, it sees this given particular comma. It also thinks to go to the next line. After seeing this at this entire thing, in the 8th line, you can clearly see at the end of the line we have this something known as false. Once after seeing this respect to false, it comes to a conclusion. Okay, this is the end of line. This is the end of this entire code altogether. So we can also write this code like this. We can also have multiple declarations like this. Some people will still try to confuse like this. We'll try to have this thing like this. Well, some people will also mention like this, because in one of the interviews I faced the same thing. This is also correct. This is also correct. This also works completely fine. People will try to confuse because this is one of the languages where interviewer and interview both will get confused. So do not worry, this also will works. I try to cover as many loops that this given particular JavaScript has in this respective entire complete course altogether. Right? Now, apart from this given particular let, we can also declare variables in JavaScript, or we can also let me write a comment using let to declare or to initialize a variable in JS. We can also use var, var. Apart from this var, we can also use const. I can simply say var I can say msg is equals to high. So here also we are declaring a MSG variable, but var has some kind of an issues, which we are going to see in future classes. But in modern JavaScript, people are not using var. People are using let. And we have something known as const. We have something like const age is equal to 25. Sorry, not age. Const what I can give? Const BMI is 25, or it's a 95, for example. 95. So we can also declare variables specifically while using const. Whenever you're using const, try to have your given particular variable name starting with capital letter. That's a one good practice to do. When you are declaring any variable using const, first the variable name should start with a capital letter. That's a very good thing to do. Or you can keep the entire variable name in capital letters. That's your choice. Second important thing I just want to mention is, let's say we have declared a variable known as message here, where it is storing the data known as hello, right? Now I can do this thing. Message is equal to something like world. I can do this thing. It's completely valid. Where whenever this message variable, which is declared using let, can whatever data that is present inside this variable can be changed. Can be changed. Similarly, here also I can say MSG is equal to something like by. I can do this. I can do this. So variables that are declared using let and where, data that is being stored inside these two kind of a variables like these, we can change the data as we go forward. But variables who are declared using const, specifically using this respect to const, they cannot change the data. For example, if I say BMI is equals to 23, it's fine. It's fine. But if I say hello, it's still showing fine. But let's run the code. Let's run the code. I'll say node index.chase. Clearly see. You can clearly see that this is not fine. It is clearly mentioning that error here. It is mentioning assignment to const variable. It is clearly mentioning that, boss, for a const variable, once a data is being stored inside a const variable, it cannot be altered. It cannot be changed. It cannot be changed. If I change this thing to something 25 or 20, let's rerun the code. Let's rerun the code. Now it's still showing me an error. Assignment to const variable. The error is showing you like this. It is clearly telling, once you have declared a const variable and you stored some data inside the const variable, that's it. You are not going to change. So this is all about the respective different ways of declaring the declaring the respective data inside the respective JavaScript. So that's it for this respective session. We'll meet in the next session and we'll try to understand and get more number of nitty-gritty details about JavaScript. So that's all for this session. Thank you all.